What's going on, everybody? Full breakdown of the Spider-Man leaks. Nope, that's not what we're doing today. We're going to go straight into the rewatch. It is going to be that we continue on to our rewatch series. And what is the rewatch series? It's the Spider-Man movies. We know that No Way Home is coming out. We've been watching all of these movies, and we have finally reached the MCU version, the Tom Holland ones. We are going to get into Homecoming, starring Tom Holland. And we are going to first cover the scene in Civil War because that's what really started his path into the MCU overall. It's myself, it's Coy Gendreau, and it is Winston A. Marshall, excuse me, very little.
Appreciate that.
So we are going to be getting into all of this on The Big Thing. Please make sure that you subscribe to us on podcasts and all that stuff. But let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. It is The Big Thing. Come on now. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's The Big Thing. Check this out. This is something I wanted to tell you guys about as we get into it. Big Thing is available on Apple Podcasts. We don't do donations here. We don't do super chats. We don't do schmobots. We don't do any of it. None of it. But we need you guys to download the episodes. People got a great response off the Corey Coleman episode the other day. It's a great listen on audio, Spotify, wherever. Check it out, man. It's it helps a lot. You know what else helps is getting to this MCU Spiderman. I got my buddies here to help me talk about it. Winston's
now I'm big win. Like Jesus. There we go. That was like
I wouldn't give you the
extreme close up that ECU.
Yeah, you're not Jesus yet. I said you're like Jesus. I don't think so. This is a great movie.
It really is, man.
It's a great movie.
It really is.
But let's get into Civil War. We'll start with that because I think
also a great movie.
Also a great movie.
Why do you hate that microphone so much?
I don't hate it, but do you see how big and black it is, bro?
I spent the first 3 episodes like
my
this.
mouth on it.
For
like
3 episodes, I didn't even know.
I stayed away from so much right there. I stayed away from so much.
I mean, yes, I did that on purpose.
I know, but I still stayed away
you.
because I was thinking of knocking over potted plants when you wake up in the morning to take a piss.
It's your own battle. It's your own battle to lose.
That's why I have to wait for Kristian to leave and go to work, so I don't hurt anybody.
It's like a rhinoceros penis.
That's thoughtful. That's really thoughtful of you. I respect that.
I do have a question though.
Yes. Does it relate to this?
Sort of. Are you single or dating someone?
Dating someone.
Okay. So and you're married. So my question is,
as a press,
my question is, do y'all do the same thing that I do, where my girlfriend will get up, she'll go take a shower, and right as she's like about to take her towel off to get her clothes, I instantly wake up and I'm just staring, just like, oh hey. And she's like every morning, it's like your spider sense goes off, and you just know.
There's
I'm
a naked sense, dude. There's 100% a naked sense, and it's
somebody
essential.
who's not married yet, because once she wakes up, all you're gonna want to do is sleep. Go sleep, and then you have kids, and that just dies.
Was that a divorce lawyer ad I just heard for divorce?
That was the two of us on the same wavelength.
Brought to you by Better Legal Help.
We had a conversation the other day. My daughter, who's now 10 years old, and now if I even walk by, she's like, Dad, I'm in the shower. I'm like, okay, take it easy, right? She's like, you shouldn't see Mom naked. That's inappropriate. And my wife goes,
there's some math missing.
She's like, I said, your mother walks around the house naked all the time. I'm like, in front of all of us. And she goes, oh yeah. Anyway, so this is I
hope it never gets old, but I hear it does. I hear it does.
It's fair. The thing
not old. It just no. First of all, if I'm awake, yeah, okay, look at it.
No. But
I'm talking, if I'm sleeping, I want my sleep.
Kristian, it's literally like this. Absolutely just.
And you pop in and say, yeah.
Oh,
right.
Shit.
It's the scene on the bus in Infinity War.
And then as soon as the clothes are on, all right, good night.
That's right. I get it.
It's an interstitial. It's just a little.
It's almost like sleepwalking.
Yeah.
It is genuinely a naked
we're not going to sleepwalk through this review. Let's
we're not. Let's go.
Civil War,
man. So when this, because we talked about it, we were going to watch them in like bulk and then do like a full episode. Like, nah, let's kind of watch it as it relates to it, because it's and I'm glad that we did, because it's so relevant to the story, even the way that it opens up, dude. Right? So this one, the Civil War, Tony and Black Widow are having the conversation of the recruitment, and she's like, well, where's your person? And then the great music, and it goes to Queens. And I remember being in the theater, and the second Queens popped up, and the music, people erupted.
Yeah.
It was like,
It's one of my favorite MCU moments.
It's a great moment. It's
It's pretty
moment.
And him
awesome.
carrying the DVD player is quintessential Spider-Man. Like the image of him with that, knowing that he's a kid trying to make things work, and then you see him like rebuilding stuff. I was immediately endeared to this Tom Holland Spider-Man, and they did it in like 3 scenes. I would argue those scenes are some of the better Spider-Man scenes, the Civil War scenes.
I would agree with you, and I think it does the same thing for me as in this film that it does for T'Challa, in that like you have set a tone now, so when it is time to actually go and introduce
You
them
know
for
what
their
world
films,
you know what you're getting.
You're so ready for it.
It does, because it's and I also like the little information that they give you once Tony like meets him, right? And the great moment with him and Aunt May. When he's talking about, that's your aunt. That type of thing. And then he goes in, and he's like I've only had this power for like 6 months,
Right.
So we didn't need to see the full thing. There's like a slight hint to Ben, just a slight hint when he's just talking, when he's telling Tony
Why do you do this?
why he's
Yeah.
doing it, and there's no mention. He never mentions Ben. I don't think they've mentioned. Have they ever mentioned him in any of the movies? Not once.
Now in Far From Home. It's a thing.
Oh, okay. Once in Far From Home?
Yeah.
Never mentioned him once. So, and maybe it's a thing between Spider-Man fans. I actually like it. I think it's fine. And I like that it's because we've seen it a million times over in the other movies. But this, it's set up. You see him kind of swinging around. He catches the car, and Tony's like, "All right, well, look, I'm going to recruit a 15-year-old now to help me fight my buddies." But it's exactly what you're saying. The second he shows up on the ruse and he fires back in, it had that Andrew Garfield humor that I felt like a 15 or 16-year-old kid would do. To me, this was the Spider-Man that we always. I think you guys said it before we went on the air. Is that Garfield, even though he's playing a high school kid, read more college.
Yes.
This and Tobey Maguire was 50 when he did the first one. So
My back.
yeah. So this was like the first legitimate, like seemed like kid that was playing this with this character.
And
so
it felt authentic, whereas
did.
it felt like Garfield was trying to play young when they could have just said like college. And that would have worked better for Doc Connors. That would have worked better for Gwen Stacy, like we were saying right before air. Like him at ESU would have been a better Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, period. But I understand why Sony got nervous. Like I see where the suits were involved versus the actual characterization.
Sure.
And then with Tom Holland, it was like we changed who the suits were because the suits had new suits to talk to. And there's a lot of interesting moments where if you know the story of how Tom Holland got cast, there was a ton of improv. He actually acted in screen tests opposite both Chris Evans and Downey Jr.
Okay.
And then the scene in the bedroom where Downey Jr.'s like, you gotta move the feet. I'm gonna sit. Like that whole scene was Tom actually being nervous to be around Robert Downey Jr.
That's great.
So they improv that whole dynamic, kept it in the movie. So those moments are what I think makes Tom Holland stronger. Is he's so Spider-Man that even when he's accidentally wrong, he's still Spider-Man.
Right.
And that translates.
Well, and it's also, if you're gonna have to introduce them, one of the biggest things, which I know they're pushing really hard with Kamala Khan in. They did it in the Avengers game. It was a terrible game, but they did it with that. I enjoyed it, but it's not a good game. But you see that in the comics as well. It's the idea that, again, this kid being a superhero now, obviously he idolizes Captain America, Iron Man, and so you're seeing this. You're seeing a teenager meet his like. My favorite part is when he's fighting Bucky and he catches the arm. He goes, "Whoa,
metal arm, dude."
metal arm!" And then he's like, "Are those wings made out of carbon fiber? That's so cool." And you know that they can. He's like, "Oh, dude, why? There's not this much talking and fighting."
And that's so
you're
Spider-Man.
right. You're right, and it's so Spider-Man, and that's and it played into the stuff that I really liked about the Garfield stuff, but minus some of the nonsense, right? So all of that is set up really well, and then it sets up the father-son relationship between him and Tony, and then when he goes and he gets hurt, and he's like, "All right, you're out now. That's it now." And that's basically all we need to see of him in Civil War. He doesn't need to get more involved. It's the setup. It gets us involved, and it ultimately takes us into Homecoming.
And of course, the Empire line.
Yes,
and
the Empire
the whole like, "Yo, how old is this guy?" And he's like, "I didn't carbonate him." Like that's whole,
yeah.
I also think it was really clever in Homecoming how they used that sequence. And this is the business side. And I hate that my brain goes here.
This is the part to get right into it.
So the angles they use in his camera lens, which is genius, like Spider-Man filming himself, and that opening is one of the most ingenious ways to have an opening narration.
And shows again the type of generation of what that he's a kid.
He's a Gen Z kid,
Yeah,
but it's also really clever. And this is from a business side. Everyone is just far enough away you can't tell that those actors don't have to be credited as those actors. So you save the studio their check mark for Scarlett Johansson. So she's not actually in this movie, so she can't say like, "Oh, that's one of my Marvel contracts."
Right.
So they were really clever that they were just far enough away that it's like an
smart.
Avengers sequence, but they could be like toys.
No, that was pretty brilliant. And I guess the last thing that kind of clicks with this in general is, the fact that we're doing this and we're going to get this callback in the next film with the kids talking about the blip and doing their really shitty
that
news broadcast.
I love those kids, dude. They're fantastic.
That kid was in that. The girl is the daughter from Mayor of Easttown.
Oh, no way.
Oh,
that
she knows she's playing Betty Brand, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah, that she mentions it flippantly in this one. It's like it's a name.
It's a lower third.
Yeah.
Because they do the news again at the start of this.
Right.
And
So,
yeah.
all right. So the movie starts out, and we set up exactly as you guys were saying, the same tone that we get in Civil War. Of here's this Spider-Man. They introduced him. If you liked him in Civil War, well, here's his full movie, man. And they pitched it when they showed it at Comic-Con, like the John Hughes type feel, right? And you definitely got that throughout. Even some of the music choices throughout it are kind of 80s, and you can.
It's great. Well,
yeah, that was set maybe late 70s, whatever it might be. But either way, it's you feel that tone of what they're going for, and the relationship again to me. I know that a lot of complaints with this is that it's so reliant on Downey, right?
But it's less than I remember.
It is less than I remember. That's one point. But the other part is that when you go into the Spider-Man comics and the stuff that Iron Man was always around, right? He was around or a lot. I mean, other characters were around.
Other characters,
that's fine.
Dr.
Whether
Strange,
it's
a mentor figure. I'm hearing you.
Marvel. Other Marvel people were involved, whether it's Punisher or whoever it was. They were involved, right? So like this was definitely the most Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man that we ever got, and I liked it because it was a different bit of a change because of the other two movies that we had got, which I also liked, but those were individualized. This was for exactly what we're getting with No Way Home. This was to tie it all together. They're bringing it all together to put him in his own individualized story, with hence the Vulture and everything that you have. But it was to also tie in how it works with Happy. Like the dynamic with Happy was great. So, and he is, to me, Tom Holland is the perfect Spider-Man on both the Peter Parker level and the Spider-Man.
So this to me went from a B+ to a full A, not A-, A, and this is a bigger leap than any of the rest. Like I think Amazing Spider-Man reminded me how much I used to love it, but I let the pop culture consensus drop it, and then I think the same thing happened with this movie, where like over time I heard enough people complain about the Iron Man thing that I thought it was more. I heard enough people complain about this and that while I was actually watching it, I was like, wait, this movie is as good or better than I remember my first experience of it being. It's actually cleanly my favorite Spider-Man film now that I've watched them all back to back to back to back. This one is enough better than the Spider-Man 1 and 2 and Amazing Spider-Man that it's like comfortably number one.
Yeah.
I think the End of the Spider-Verse is still going to beat it when I get there, but I think...
I cheated, guys.
Oh, did you watch it already?
I watched it.
You finally saw it, so you hadn't seen it yet.
I already saw it.
No, but like a second time.
I had already seen it.
You hadn't seen it since theaters, right?
My daughter never saw it.
Oh,
my
what
daughter
did she think?
loved it.
It's incredible.
Loved it.
It's
But
so special. That's the next.
Another
That's
show.
in a few weeks. But
yeah.
I do think Homecoming has a lot of the strengths that I didn't realize because I was so focused on the memories of it, and it manages to have not only like 5 villains, but it managed to make them all interesting enough they could all get spinoffs, which is what Sony wants, which is what Sony's doing, and it gives us
5 villains in this one.
Yeah.
Tinkerer.
Who's
Vulture.
Tinker? Talk to me like I know him.
One of the very first Spider-Man villains of all time. He basically invents
who's
things.
he in this?
The schlubby guy that's making all the tech.
Oh, okay.
The guy that's like in the lab.
Sure. He was the orange is the new black guy.
I count 4 unless you're counting both shots. Oh, you're talking about Aaron?
I'm talking about Donald Glover's.
Right.
So it sets up Prowler.
But I guess that's the whole thing. Prowler is kind of that weird.
They mentioned climbers, man.
It's
that means you
funny
can set them
Yeah.
up. You get enough screen time that I'm saying spinoffs are possible.
Sure.
I'm
Okay.
giving
Yes.
imagine you tell me right now there's a movie with 5 Spider-Man villains in it, and you're like, that sounds awkward.
Right.
And this doesn't feel.
But
no, it doesn't.
This is how you do it properly.
And that's how you make these spinoffs.
Well,
that Sony
because they're not focusing so much on it. They're just introducing them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like
you do get 2 shockers, but you don't feel like it's crowded.
Right. When you focus in on them and try to give them too much backstory, you actually wind up hurting yourself. Hence, Amazing Spider-Man 2, with not enough depth to both Goblin and Electro.
Yeah.
Where in this one, the focus is all on Vulture, and you get him in it. And speaking of Michael Keaton, I think you mentioned this last week. I also agree. I think he's one of the best MCU villains.
My number 4 villain of all the MCU for me.
Because the reason why I like a lot of the villains that have their own purpose, that there's a lot of Tony Soprano with him in this.
Yeah.
Like it's like his
dad.
Oh, and specifically because he's Tony Soprano, not because he has a good backstory, but
No.
specifically.
But why Tony Soprano is a great villain also is because he doesn't, what he's doing, he even says it to Melfi in the thing. He's like, I'm a good guy. It's like, no, you're not. But to him, he's a good guy that's trying to protect his family. And he says, and Michael Keaton does the same thing. He says to him, he goes, doing it to her, doing it for her, Pete. And he's doing it. Oh, give me a look over there.
I got a hot take.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think Keaton's a better Vulture than he is Batman.
Yeah, I would say that.
I think this is like.
I think part of it is the further along you go in your career, most actors are only going to get better with like fine wine, and that's the thing.
Yeah, that's true too. After Birdman and stuff too.
Yeah,
sure.
and after Beetlejuice, there's a lot of Beetlejuice in this.
But Vulture and Birdman into Vulture is pretty fun.
It's so amazing. After Batman playing those two, he flies a lot. This guy,
hilarious.
He's coming back to fly again.
Yeah,
I know, right?
He's in 2 movies. He's going to be. I thought he was
Vulture
the guy.
and Batman.
Right, within like a year.
He's in Morbius.
And I thought he was going to be gathering the Sinister Six, so I thought there was going to be a chance that he was gathering the Justice League in Flashpoint and gathering the Sinister Six. I'm like, yo, Michael Keaton just putting worlds together. And then there's an amalgam universe where Michael Keaton meets Michael Keaton as Batman and Vulture. Like, my headcanon's crazy. But
that would be great.
I do think Keaton is the strongest here as one of the strongest villains in the MCU because, like, that scene in the car is one of the best villain scenes in the MCU.
By far, because that's the thing. He is much more terrifying as Liz's dad, as Toomes, than he is as the actual Vulture. And it's not to say that the Vulture isn't terrifying because
sitting on the perch.
the Vulture manhandles him. Let's be real. He doesn't really ever get the upper hand on the Vulture. It's purely just based off of that whole fight in the air, and then at the end his pack goes out.
Dude has to explode to lose.
But,
he didn't lose to Spider-Man. He lost to his pack.
He's beating the piss out of a 15-year-old.
Right, but that's the one thing that I will say that I love about this. And there was something that happened around the end of Phase 2, mainly in Phase 3, where they finally figured out villains properly.
Yeah,
where you were giving them proper motivations.
Yeah, Killmonger.
Killmonger, Thanos, Vulture.
Took a while for them to get that. And they started with what's his face from Bruhl from Civil War.
Baron Zemo, yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Civil War had a good.
He was there.
And then they gave him way more to do in Falcon to bolster it.
He was much better in Falcon than he was in that. But that was the first one that you're like, okay, he's got a purpose of what he thinks is right. They didn't really nail it yet. He's just kind of
because he beat everyone with dialogue, but we weren't quite ready for that.
It's not why you went to see that movie.
Right.
You went to see that movie because of the fight in the airport scene. But this
which
movie,
he caused.
Michael Keaton,
he crawled so Vulture could fly, dog. Like that's essentially what it is.
100%.
He set that up so that we now are not just looking for who's the next baddie to go beat him up. Like, they tried with Whiplash. It just didn't translate.
Well, that's
no. They tried because they were like, my dad. You stole all my dad's shit. It just didn't work.
But and then that happened because I personally think it's because they let Ike Perlmutter go and Kevin Feige took over. Like Phase 3 was Kevin Feige going
second,
like,
they let him
build.
And you know what else they did? The second they took, like, the music came back.
Yeah.
Because Kevin Feige is very heavy into music and score.
It's emotional.
Well, because Perlmutter would fire everybody because they want to pay him for the next movie, and that's why all the Captain America, the second movie didn't have, you had like a hint. You only use like a hint of it, of the Silvestri thing. Like
and
Silvestri,
the sets look cheap because they're just repainting shit.
Well, because Silvestri wasn't even attached to the second Avengers movie, and he came up with the damn theme. It wasn't even him.
I didn't know that.
And then he comes back for Infinity War.
Yeah, and then the movies get that heart back.
Remember, the main,
I love how much of a score guy you are because I don't know
the
this shit.
main Avengers team does not come back, and that's why. And looping that back into this, I didn't really think that there was like the Danny Elfman score still out of Spider-Man, still my favorite out of all of them. It's the most recognizable to me. And I would love if they play it.
I think
in this new movie. Well, that's if the three of them are in and standing in a dock.
We'll see. Check his dick.
But we'll see. But we'll see. But when either way, we're gonna find out if it's gonna be if
we're weeks out now. We're like 7 weeks out, which is exciting.
But the music itself, this to me was the most recognizable since Elfman, right? Like when I started humming it to myself, I was watching it, like, and when he shows up in other movies, and you're like, okay, it works for him, and I thought that the music played pretty well.
It was also more friendly neighborhood than I remembered. I've always complained that the MCU Spider-Man doesn't get to be. It's because I think I listen to everybody. He fights for a bodega.
It's the reason why you're doing that is because remember at this point he's been in what? Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, Far From Home, and Homecoming.
So only
4 of those films
fair.
He's not, and I think that's why you're thinking about that. Just because the next solo film, he is still technically friendly neighborhood, but just in Europe.
And it's also it's almost cosmic, like the scale of it, like what he's fighting and stuff. So this is the one that stays friendly neighborhood. So I'm trying to isolate my feeling towards that character here.
But I appreciate that because let's be honest. Like yes, most of Spider-Man stuff is just protecting New York, but there is a point where he continues to evolve and get more involved in ridiculous things happening outside of it.
I also think the timing is tricky because Dan Slott was writing Spider-Man around now, and he was doing the Iron Iron Spider stuff that people love that I've never been a fan of. Like, Dan Slott is a very iconic Spider-Man writer, but the problem is he gave us two of the best-selling comics that I think tarnish Spider-Man the most. So, like, he gave us Superior Spider-Man, which should have been, in my opinion, a what if, where Doc Ock takes over Spider-Man's body that lasts for 60 months. Yeah. That's 5 years. Too long. And he also gave us Iron Spider, which is basically Iron Man, Spider-Man as one character. Spider-Man owns Parker Industries, which takes over lots of companies, and he becomes this global character with tech. That's Iron Man. Well, and I think that affected the movies because they were selling so well.
Well, what can tarnish a lot of people's relationships and tarnish a lot of people in general, if you don't shave your balls. And you gotta make sure that you shave your nuts.
I was like, bidet?
You gotta do it. If you get a bidet, then make sure that you don't hit a big old bushel when you do it. This holiday season, we're going to give thanks to our friends over at Manscaped. Yeah, Manscaped, they rule. And why do they rule? Because what do you do here? Do you tell your extended family that you have the Performance Package 4.0 from the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming? Not to mention, it includes the Lawnmower 4.0, the trimmer to tame the bush and score brownie points with the in-laws. Gift yourself Manscaped. Or the man in your life who needs it. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with 20% off and free shipping with the code BIGTHING by going to manscaped.com. All you fuckers out there don't have this thing. And I keep getting more and more of you who say, like, hey, yeah, I finally tried it. What were you doing? Were you going in there with a machete and trying to lop off your sausage? That's stupid. And don't be a fucking asshole. What you need to do is get yourself a Manscaped. You think that your holiday spread is good? It's time to give thanks to Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Or you know what I call it? The perfect package for your package, Chief. So listen to this. The Performance Package 4.0, it also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and your ear. You're sitting around picking your nose hairs like a stunad. Sitting around going, oh, look, check this out. And then you got your teary eyes because you thought you were going to be super strong and pick nose hairs out of your nose like a stupid ass. Instead, now you can use this thing. And it is what this nose and there's no fucking air. It's an ear. And the ear hair trimmer uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system to provide proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes. Manscaped's been busy, man, and they just launched their refined body wash, 2-in-1 shampoo, plus conditioner. Both features the Manscaped signature scent and will help unlock your confidence this year. Your boys and your body will be oh so fresh and so clean when you start off yourself by using the self-care routine with the Ultimate Body Wash, shampoo, and the conditioner. I love their conditioner and the shampoo. I use it all the time. You get 20% off and free shipping with the code BIGTHING at manscaped.com. That is 20% off. Free shipping with the code BIGTHING at manscaped.com. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you.
Holiday spread, nicely done. I just wanted to give specific credit to that.
I was just going to say, I mean, you don't want to. It's almost Thanksgiving time. You don't want to end up with your turkey with too much garnish. You know,
no, man.
You got an appropriate amount of stuffing at all times.
I don't understand. I've been getting a lot of people now who've been like, and I think that because we've been having some fun with these ads too, more people are like, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to check it out now too, and they have been like, holy shit! I got so many messages now. Like, I didn't even know about Manscaped. I thought it was just a sponsor. I'm like, yeah, it's a great sponsor. Get it? It is.
Used it for years.
It's pretty dope.
Religious should be using this thing. All right, back to this the movie at hand. So there's a lot of that they changed, but again, because of the changing in the lore, because the Vulture and the daughter, that's not a thing in the comic.
What's beautiful is it mirrors Green Goblin. So I love about it is that it's a twist on a known twist. So Spider-Man dealing with parents is always a thing.
Right.
And what they do is they set it up so like the green car, the Green Goblin, and the glider becomes the Vulture wings. Right. All of that was really ingenious because you get what everyone thinks of as iconic Spider-Man moments, but with a twist on a twist.
There were two things that made me think about the Vulture immediately going into the film. The first, I do miss his original power set of kind of like draining life force to like make himself.
I mean, that was way later though.
Yeah,
that was 90s.
No. I know that. I know that, but I miss that kind of element. It was always kind of interesting because then you're in a lot of ways. Sometimes you were similar to Parasite with Superman. You're like almost depowering Spider-Man for a minute, having to figure something else out. Because again, those are the fights that I like more, is when Spider-Man is actually using his head, because the truth is a lot of times he's not smarter than a lot of people, or he's not stronger than a lot of people, but he's smarter. So I miss that element a little bit. But the flip side of it is, I can't think of a moment in an MCU film until we get to Infinity War or Endgame that made me audibly gasp more than when he opens the door for taking Liz to Homecoming, and then there's Michael Keaton. I was like, oh,
it was a good move.
And calling him Pedro, the condescending parent thing, all of that ties so beautifully into young Spider-Man, because not only do you get the intimidation of a villain, but you get someone that knows who Spider-Man is without it being cheesy. And that's what's great about the MCU.
And it's funny,
people
like,
watching him connect the dots.
You see it all happen with
the dots in the car
with her dialogue,
and it's also him looking for that father figure, right? He's been looking for the father figure in Tony. You got this kind of anti-father figure here now in Michael Keaton. And the moment to me that screamed, "Oh, this is a kid!" Like that when they tried when Tobey Maguire is on the train. Oh, that's just a kid. He's 40.
No, man, that guy pays taxes. That guy's been paying taxes.
But he's a kid. It's like, no, he's not a kid. He's like 29. When he is under the rubble,
Amazing Spider-Man 33,
that's
my favorite.
That's one of
the
favorites.
Literally,
it's a real thing. It's amazing. It's exactly that. A building collapses.
Yeah,
and that's literally at the upper level of his like strength ththreshold. But he's a kid. So
he's a kid,
freaking out,
and he's there,
screaming for help,
and it goes back to that thing. If you're nothing without the suit, and he's like, come on, Spider-Man, and he's like rooting himself. I remember in the theater that being emotional.
My favorite cover of all time. It's literally from 1963.
It's great.
And they did it perfect. And then they did the classic Spider-Man half mask, and like he calls himself Spider-Man because the kid's going to psych himself up. Like, come on, man. Come on, Spider-Man. That entire sequence is like
confident yet.
Ditko. He's so perfect.
And that actually flies back to the other thing. Like in the beginning, like every Spider-Man that we had seen before, whether it was Garfield's or Maguire, remember that big issue that I had with Garfield's was that he's on the train, he's kicking people's asses, and he's running around. He's done everything. Look at him. He figured it out really quick.
Yeah.
This guy is my favorite. My favorite thing is when he goes. He's like, "You shouldn't steal cars." Like, it's my car, dumbass.
And then Stan Lee, Gary's like, "Hey, you shut up before I come down there." He's like, "Hey, Gary, how's your mother? She's good."
And that whole sequence with like the do a backflip, the stealing, like all of that is so Spider-Man that it actually redeemed a lot of. So what I did this time was I said, "What you got?"
just you talking about like do a backflip. It just reminds me of the fairy when he's like, "All right, Spider-Man," and then like the thing falls apart. He's like, "Okay,
There's so many New York moments that don't feel as cheesy because that's like real people. But what I had to do this time was I was able to watch this and go like, okay, I love that this isn't the comic book Spider-Man, and that's a really hard thing as a comic fan to do because the Iron Man stuff really does separate it from the comic books. Because in the comic books, a lot of times Iron Man and Spider-Man wouldn't agree because Spider-Man wouldn't like that he's
right, because that's what the whole Civil War actually is, right?
Well, it's basically he convinces him to unmask, and then there's some conflicts around that because at the end of the day, Iron Man is a very like warmongery character that becomes good.
Right.
Spider-Man would never use his powers to sell arms, so that is a conflict. Whereas in the movies, I have to accept that like Tony's at a different place in his life. Like Tony's already better when he meets Peter.
Right.
So I don't mind that father figure, but that never is the timeline in the comic book. So I think comic fans, if you can separate the fact that the timelines are different and you can acknowledge Tony as a better person when they meet each other,
that's what I think
it really works.
That's also why I think this multiverse thing works now because now it's different Peters and you can separate that way, and even from the different MJs and from the different there's so much going on. It's also it surprised me that we haven't had this conversation, and it's probably relevant to have it right now. We haven't mentioned once. Is Tony Stark going to show up?
That's what I was just about to say. Get the fuck out of my head. Where's my one? Right. I straight up was like, holy shit.
We never talked about
there are two, like, we're going to a multiverse, right? So what is to stop him from, as like a last moment?
There's been rumors.
There's been rumors.
The fact that he died in every episode of What If makes me think he's coming back.
I honestly think that he's coming back just to give, like, maybe it's Tony's like, I don't know you, but this maybe what it is, what you're talking about, this warmongering Tony, maybe Tony didn't really figure it out in one of these other universes, and he has a talk with Peter,
Tony
and
Stark
Peter talks him
exist
down.
in Garfield's?
Yeah, I mean,
does Tony Stark exist in Maguire's thing? Like, so there could be some really, like, that's the one. I mean, if that one, I'll tell you right now, if that happens, and that's not the one that leaked, then who cares about the other leaks? That's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one everyone's going to be like, because everyone the second you said multiverse and you show Doc Ock, everybody can guess, okay, the other guys are going to show up, right? There's other ones that you're like, okay, that's interesting, but if he shows up, and as I'm watching this movie, That's why I think people are like, oh, don't just talk about what he thinks going to happen in the next one. Talk about this movie. Because of this.
Yeah.
Because of what happens in this movie. And it starts off that relationship that ultimately gets us to Infinity War when there's that heartbreaking moment, and then the heartbreaking moment in Endgame between them because of the relationship they have. And it's all set up. And it's really, this movie is the one that is the strongest between the two of them.
The scene on the ferry where they're talking, and he's like, I'm trying to give you a compliment, but it's him trying to be a better father than he was.
Right.
He was trying to deal with his daddy issues himself, and that makes him a better father towards his daughter in Infinity War and Endgame.
That to me is the brilliance of Feige being at the helm of this, is you have found a way to tie it back to Tony's own issues with his dad.
Yeah.
And that became a through line for him throughout the entirety of his arc from Iron Man through Endgame, which you obviously get that final conversation with his dad. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. I think you're going to get a mirrored moment of just like, Tony went in the past, saw his dad, gave him a pep talk about how to be a better dad, and everything will be fine. I think that Peter will go and find a not fully together Tony. He's going to have that conversation with them similarly.
You think that's going to happen?
I honestly think, because they've done a very good job of mirroring this without making it too heavy, I would not be surprised.
That's just one more layer.
87 cast members. This cast is
so. It's like as big as Endgame.
But they're calling it Spider-Man Endgame.
Yeah.
Like, John Watts said it's his Endgame. So, and now he is leaving this and going to do Fantastic Four. Like this trilogy.
Okay.
So this trilogy concludes an entire thing. And Tom Holland has said how sad it was and how sad the movie is. I honestly, like the recent quotes, more and more, I'm like, yo, he's stuck without the MCU. I think he's going to be in a universe without his powers, the Iron Suit. He's going to be without Tony, without the influence of Tony. I think more and more.
What about his friends? Because it's set up in this movie, because it's the beginning. Like, so it's funny, was Zendaya, right? When she's in this movie, initially didn't like this, wasn't thrilled with this version of MJ at first when I first saw it, because I thought she was just trying to play like the too cool, flipping off the finger. I'm like,
that's Z though. That's what you said.
At first, I was like, I don't know. I really liked the dynamic, because to me, it was the Vulture's daughter played like the Gwen Stacy role,
effectively,
right? which is what I liked, and I thought they worked. I thought their chemistry was great. And then she was just doing this thing where she was like, the too cool for school thing never really works for me in general. But when you start to realize who she is as a person, and she really turns around in that second movie, like she really wins me over in that. And I love their dynamic in that second movie.
To parallel that to the comics for you, the too cool for school is effectively the same as going out and partying and drinking. It's just the Gen Z version of it.
Right.
So in the comic books, her going out and drinking and partying and being a model, she's actually really broken inside, and that's her coping mechanism. To me, they made that really clear if you know the character from the comics. And that's why everybody's like, she's not the real MJ. I'm like, no, they did a better job making her the real MJ.
So after Far From Home comes out, after Far From Home was out, I went back after watching this. It really fits in even more so, because I think she does a great job as far as setting up who this is. Because it's just so they have so many wonderful moments in the next movie that I think really plays in. So
I think the other thing that I appreciate, and I think this might be one of the reasons why this jumped to your favorite Spider-Man so far. This is the first Spider-Man film that we've seen that has not been centered around one of his love stories. Like, Liz is still important. But this really is not about Peter and Liz. This is about Peter just trying to figure out who he is as a superhero and focusing on what it means to be a teenager, but also like a savior of folks and all that kind of stuff.
And to stay grounded, which is what I didn't remember the movie. It's literally the thesis, and my brain was like, I need that. And then the movie was like, this is that. I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like, I really got the movie I wanted. The problem is the movie ends with, we want you to stay friendly neighborhood. He turns down the thing and he moves on. And then they leap into him going to space, literally, and he never comes back to Earth. So I think my big issue is this movie did really well advertising with this one image of Iron Man in it, with this. And I think this was the thing that did too well. So then they kept making bigger and bigger and bigger. I think the sequelitis of it is why retroactively I don't remember how good this one was.
I understand that for sure. I think even though you are teasing the multiverse in Far From Home, and again, we'll get there next week, I think that was, again, just a very good plot device to bring, because with Mysterio's power set, the fact that his whole thing is lies and illusions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What little illusions would he be doing in New York that would have the same kind of effect? Sure. You know what I mean? So I think that makes sense. I understand. And again, we'll talk about how we both agree that we don't think that this is that Iron Man, Tony Stark centric at all. It's
not as
just
much,
enough. It's honestly a little bit of seasoning, and that's it. And then when we get to Far From Home, it's like overpowering the dish sometimes. So I think that this kind of worked out perfectly in that regard about how they kind of addressed everything and how they went that route. I think that they really just focused on Peter more than anything.
I love
than
that
any
aspect
other,
of him doing that, them doing that, because the first one is that was when you get into that problem of, well, we did that already. And this is why I like the idea of them attaching it to the MCU, because of him trying to find himself, because he's still where it's almost a year since he's had his powers when this is taking place. It's about a year, because he comes back and it's however months after Berlin and whatever it is. So it's about a year. He's only had it for a year. He's running around. He's at that great scene and I thought was super Spider-Man, when he goes into the bank. He's like, "Oh, the Avengers are here." And
Thor, Hulk, nice to meet you.
Right.
Why are you here? I mean, you're rich.
Right. All of that, like his humor really works there, and it plays very well. And so all these great moments that you have, because Holland doesn't. This is what I was talking about with Garfield, right? Who I really like as Spider-Man. My issue with him as Peter Parker was he's very confident as Peter Parker. Tom Holland is not. Tom Holland there's parts of him that he can, when he's talking to Ned and he has like these conversations. What? No,
but it's real. What? He's not tripping over every
His accent slips out though here and there.
Yeah, notice that.
But he's like, no. Wait, what do you mean? And even that reveal when Ned sees him, but he's not confident. Yeah. He's not. He's this kind of awkward kid, and then when he puts on the suit, he's more confident. He still
has an arc. He still gets to grow.
I mean, I think for me, the moments that kill me, and again, just go to how good of a Spider-Man he is even again how he uses his powers. So like when he stops the bike robber, and he's just like, "Here, hold this." Dude just goes flying up. Like that's the kind of fun Spider-Man fighting that is like that's the brilliance. Is that again, he's almost like a prankster.
Right.
It's kind of like how he fights. As a prankster, he brawls when he's pissed.
Right.
When he's pissed, he'll take your head off.
Right.
But like his standard fighting is like, I'm not necessarily trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to stop you.
He's playful in his and I also think one of my problems with this has always been the Iron Spider suit. And like, I know this isn't the Iron Spider suit, but the amount of tech in the suit really affects negatively Spider-Man. But that's the moral part too, is if you can't be this without the suit, you don't deserve this.
Right.
And that's why I'm hoping at the end of No Way Home he doesn't have it, because I want to see Spider-Man have to use his head more than like 87 webs, more than like all of that technology.
And we're not talking enough about the fact that what I really thought was a great touch was using Jennifer Connelly as the voice in Vision.
Vision's wife.
Okay. Wait, she's married to Paul Bettany?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in real life.
Yeah. So that's why I enjoyed that. But here's a problem.
Okay.
Here's a problem.
That her name is Karen?
Yes.
Well, it was
before the Karens.
I know. And so here's my problem with it, is the fact that like this is why I think it was wrong to choose that name to do everything that we did, because why not Myrtle? There's like 6 Myrtles in the world. So like and now if I watch a movie, I'm not going to get a character ruined by Myrtle, because every time they said, "Karen, can you help me?" I go, Or she said, "Hey, Karen, you know this?" And I'm like waiting for somebody to film the suit and try to post her on Twitter to get her in trouble, right? Like I'm like, it's like
timeline, man.
I know, but it's like the name is.
So you want them to re-release the film with the dub over?
No, I'm saying, why did we choose that name? There's a ton of like that. That name, it's for a bit down the line, but it's like, but for God's sakes, that particular name, you could have chose Myrtle or Gertrude.
With Barbecue Becky, so we could have stuck with Becky, but nobody went with it.
There's like 3 Gertrudes. You could have called someone Gertrude. They're all dead. The rest of them.
But that's the thing. People do refer, like, you got to watch Blurs at some point, because we actually have a breakdown of by age of what stages they're in. Yeah. So Gertrude is 65 plus, and she's got her pistol out on the lawn. Right. Bro. Like Gertrude's a real, like, that's a
right. But I mean, everybody could. But anyway, so the second, because you can't. There's no one that can watch this movie now without that. Well, can I call you Karen? It's like, well, why did he call her that? Did she say something racist?
Now we got to talk about 3 Easter eggs in this. There's 3 huge Easter eggs, 2 of which are my favorites of my top 10 Easter eggs in the MCU. One of which is just fun. I love the Branzino line, the fish line that Flash Thompson says the Branzino is the fish they're eating in Amazing Spider-Man. So
did we like Flash in this one? I know that Tony,
I like Tony.
Tony's great. I don't mean him.
I can't separate it.
I don't mean him as an actor. I mean the character, because he's not the jock that was, again, multiverse.
Sure.
Also Gen Z. I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing to click again. They literally took the property and they're like, what age are we in right now?
And who are we appealing to?
Who would be in high school? Yeah. Where would this be? So
and he's part of the debate team too. And the one kid though, who the black kid that was
that's Abraham Otta. That's hilarious. The kid from A Beast of Southern Wild.
He is hilarious.
He's
like
really
when he throws in the couple of things, it's like,
you're wrong.
Flash was wrong.
Yeah.
Remember we said not to use the bell for comedic effort.
There's some really good comedy in this.
Well, it's one of the
by the way,
funniest.
and like, so that's my thing. Like, you know, when there's certain comedic moments that fit, I love it.
The
When
mascot running by.
not just
got
the
me every
mascot.
time.
My
Every
favorite
time.
moment in the whole damn
I
thing.
missed that.
Dude, there's 3 shots of the mascot in the background just sprinting by a room. Like, and you never zoom in on it. We never mentioned it. There's just 3 shots of a guy with 3 different mascots holding their head, running by a room.
But my favorite
God.
moment in the whole thing that I laughed audibly the first time I saw it, and I did it again when I watched it earlier today when I finished it, was when freaking Favreau comes to thank him, and they're in the bathroom, the toilet flushes, and the kid comes out, and he's just like, just washing his hands.
and those silent moments in that scene.
And he looks, but then he's walking out, and he's just like, that kid's the same kid that was like, that they saw, and
chess kid.
he goes, just playing chess.
The
That
comedy in
kid
this
is
is
great.
genius.
And
So good.
That's the part where I'd never understand. Like, if you like a grittier superhero film, fine. But I never understood people that are like, I hate the MCU, because it's little moments
Be
like
happy.
that. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can still have the serious moments of come on Spider-Man, but then have that moment of just like, Flash was wrong, by the way. Like that's hilarious.
Have the scene in the car, but also
It's-
have that sequence.
It's literally delete that footage. What are those?
I thought a good mixture of the humor and the seriousness was the monument scene.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
because he's trying to figure it out again. You know, he's climbing up, and she's telling him, she's like, and then you have that kind of juxtaposition of, oh, we're fine. Lethal drop
Yeah.
in 120
and
seconds.
Flash trying to save the trophy over his friends. Like that's
hilarious,
great.
yeah.
Dude, even I'm gonna call her Suit Lady so we don't get messed up.
Yeah,
Because he
don't-
does call her Suit Lady at first.
Don't trigger Kristian.
Yeah.
Hey, no. Hey, her name's Karen. Use it. But I'm just saying that they took that name. I just feel bad for anybody who's not an asshole face that is named
Named
Karen.
Karen.
I mean,
That's
what I'm saying.
the funniest thing is a friend of mine named Karen, who I've known for a long time, was like, "I'll be your Karen anytime, and I don't even care if
Right.
they've ruined my name." Like,
what I mean.
it's totally fine.
But
But
he's like, what's up, Kay?
but like even when he's like, oh god, and he's like, oh, splitter web, taser web, he's like doing all this stuff, and then he's like, great job there, Peter, you were 95% effective.
Yeah.
Wait, 95, and then this just starts
Yeah.
falling apart. I'm like, even that in a very
great.
serious moment is
It's a fun
hilarious.
joke.
Because it's when it ties in for me. Right?
Yeah.
When that's
It's not
whether
a forced-
Star
yeah.
Wars or whatever it might be, when it's actually works out. Like I always use the if you want to use the 2 examples that I use for Star Wars, Han Solo when he's in episode 4, and it's like, who is this? Boom, he shoots his boring conversation anyway, right? That's what Han Solo would
Yeah,
do, as
yeah.
opposed to, is this General Hugs? Hugs? Oh, your mom's on the phone. What? He's toying with you, sir. What are you talking about?
It was very Spaceballs.
We're
I
just
know.
so Spaceballs. But this, to me, was like, we've set Spider-Man up. We've set up this whole thing where we're in this zone that it works. There's a lot of stuff that I think, and the happy stuff, and like, you just want to take the phone call.
Yeah.
I like Ned in this one better than I like him in the next one.
I'm really curious about rewatching the next one because of how I thought this was a B+ film and realizing it's an A. I'm really curious what I think of Far From Home and rewatching. But I got 2 Easter eggs I want to gish.
Yes,
All right,
please,
so
please.
my 2 of my favorite Easter eggs in the entire MCU. One is the principal is played by the same actor
Yes, who
that
was in
plays in the
First
Howling
Avenger.
Commando.
Yep.
So he's in First Avenger as a guy in the 40s. So there's a scene in the principal's office where he has a photo of himself
wow.
behind
Oh,
him
wow.
because he's
Kinda
playing his own
yeah.
grandson. So instead of like having the joke of
You mean
casting
Grandfather.
Yeah, so the grandfather's photo is behind him. So he's
Right.
playing his own grandson from the guy
Oh, I
from
see.
First
Right,
Avenger.
right, right.
That's genius.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
So,
Yeah.
and the second one
didn't
is
pick that up.
Donald Glover is the reason we got Miles Morales.
Yes.
Because
Yes,
the
that we know.
campaign Spider-Man was Donald for
Well,
Spider-Man.
Donald for Spider-Man, but there was, again, as that came out in said Sony leaks, that they were like, Spider-Man will never be anything but white and straight. And so Miles, that was both a nod to, I guess, because of an Andrew Garfield interview recently. He was like, well, what if, like he exploring his sexuality?
Yeah,
Well,
they're trying to have him
we're
be
not
a-
going to do that.
So when you said that, though, someone had written back that was not because, well, certainly in Into the Spider-Verse, he's got a thing for Gwen. Right?
Yes.
So, like,
but that's the thing. So Miles is bi. So there's a
okay.
there's a point at which like he is flirted with Gwen before. I can't remember the character that he ends up flirting with at one point.
Miles?
But yeah. I cannot
Yeah,
remember to
names are
save my
tricky.
life, but it is
Right.
something that was like known a while back, and that's the other thing is he's half black, half Puerto Rican, so it's also that too. So they were trying to not necessarily push Donald to be Peter Parker, though
Yeah.
they were wanting that too, if that's a
remember that.
possibility.
Sure.
But they wanted him as Miles,
Right.
and that's where they wouldn't do it, and so he actually got a bunch of nods from Marvel in one way or another. So when this is Aaron Jones, he actually plays the voice of Miles Morales in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, so he's still got to do it to a certain
What I love
extent.
in this is he's Aaron Davis.
Yes.
So he plays his own uncle. So
Well, no,
in this,
that I
he
remember-
references his nephew.
Well, it's funny is that's why I'm glad that I watched Spider-Verse.
Because you got
that tie-in.
Right away. I mean, I remember people telling me about it, like and he mentions it. He says
climbers.
He
looking
talks about his nephew.
Yeah, exactly. He says I got a nephew here. But the thing I love, the detail I love, is the car he's webbed to. The license plate is Ultimate Spider-Man 1, which is the first appearance of Miles Morales. So he's playing a character that his first appearance he's glued to the car of, mentions like all of it is so many tiers of meta, which is Donald Webb.
So when that whole thing, does that tie in anything? Do you think, because you had mentioned you think that's potentially that Miles might show up in this?
I would at this point. This is what I think is going to end up happening. I think you're going to overload people if you do go full Spider-Man everywhere. You might see him in the back. Now that we know some of the things, and even now this idea, because it's in my head now, I think he's going to see Tony Stark. I think you probably stick with the 3 Spider-Man. I think you probably see the various villains and stuff like that. I think your post-credit scene is Miles in some form or fashion. I think that there might be I think
multiverses. I think Doctor Strange is going to be the post.
I think post-credit scene's Venom.
And but there's 2.
But I think they're going to flash. I think we flash through the multiverses, and it's during the movie we flash through a world of Miles. I think we flash through a Spider-Gwen. I think we flash through a Miles. I think we flash through a Peter Porker. I honestly think we're going to go through some. I honestly think we're going to go through some crazy. But that's the only way you bring in animation, not make it feel weird.
I don't know if you could ever not make it feel weird. By the way, my daughter's favorite was Spider-Ham.
Yeah,
and he's
Spider-Man Noir for me.
Nicolas Cage, man, good God.
He's got the best line in the whole movie, and I know we're not talking about that, but when he goes, "We don't pick the ballroom, we just dance."
Yes, yes. I love the smells like rain line. Nicolas Cage just nails that movie.
But even Spider-Ham when he goes, he's like, "Have you ever just floated in whatever the smell and smelling a fresh pie or whatever he says?"
Dude, but nice to meet you. My hands are wet because I washed them.
So I don't know if I could see him in a live action.
I don't know if it'll be a voice. I think it might
flash.
But I do think Miles is going to be in that sequence. And I think that he needs to be not with Tom Holland because of the age thing we talked about last week.
Well, sure. Yeah, the one thing I will tell you, though, is that no one's too scared of this movie, and it's because it's not a scary movie, guys. It's not a scary movie. It's a Marvel film. And if you want scary movies, the best way to do it, what's better? It's starting to get nice and cold and chilly. What's better on a chilly fall night than curling up in front of the TV for a scary movie? And nobody has a better collection.
Now I'm scared.
Of home thriller and the supernatural than Shudder. This is the best streaming services for horror. Shudder.
Wow.
Shudder is the exclusive home for found footage, the found footage hit VHS 94, which is a Shudder original. Binge the latest sessions of Creepshow, Slasher, both exclusively on Shudder. So there's so many different titles. Creepshow, Elvira's 40th anniversary, very scary, very special. Seance, VHS 94, the medium. There's so much. And you can stream all these, the great thrillers, the horrors, the suspense for $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year. Shudder has the largest, fastest growing, curated selection of thrilling and dangerous entertainment. It is the Netflix of horror, and if people have been saying this for a while. Someone wrote to me and said, "You don't even like horror. Why do you?" I'm like, I like good horror. I like thrillers. And this, what Shudder has so many different choices. And that's what I love about it. And there's so many different supernatural terrors, edge-of-the-seat thrillers, and shocking horrors that are added every week. You can stream the unexpected on your favorite devices. iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, Xbox One, Amazon Fire TV, Google. I'm so scared that I can't even get it out of there. It's Google Chromecast, all of it. So you'll have unlimited access to stream ad-free on all your favorite devices. And Shudder has a unique collection of exclusive and original films, series, horror classics, and all of it. I really enjoying it so far. And the Creepshow for me is always very nostalgic, so I love the series that they do, and that's what I've liked about getting Shudder, and I think you guys will enjoy it also. Here's what you do. You get started streaming on the best horror, thriller, and supernatural content. And how you do it? Shudder's expertly curated collection includes must-see titles like the Mortuary Collection, PG, Psycho Gorman. There's so much great stuff. Try Shudder for free for 30 days. Go to Shudder.com and use that promo code BIGTHING. Spell it out. Here we go. You ready? I'm going to spell it out for you. SHUDDER. Shudder.com. It's the best. It's really good. It's Netflix horror. Clark Wolf, Bibiani, they rave about it. And as you said, I'm not a massive horror fan. But since I've gotten involved with Shudder, watching Shudder and watching these thrillers, that's what you should do. And it's very popular, as it should be. All right. moving on, and
That might be the only thing that I don't personally partake in.
is what horror.
Is Shudder, yeah. That's the only sponsor that I'm like.
You're
that's
scared out of
forever.
your mind.
It's not that I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm also like,
You're scared out of your mind.
I caught it. Why? Just put him over there. Halloween's over.
We're deep November.
He's doing good. All right. So what else do we need to really hit on here? Because like Ned, so as I mentioned,
Supporting cast great,
Ned's
villain great.
The end when Marissa Tomei goes. So I forget because she discovers him in this, and I have to go back and watch Far From Home, and I just saw it recently, and I can't remember. So she knows he's Spider-Man at that point.
Yeah, they do the
They
feast organization together.
Right.
Well, yes, because at the very end of this movie, he's like, he's got the suit back. He slings it. He takes his mask off, and then unfocused Marissa Tomei in the back. What the?
Now, what bothers me is they don't really allow him to have spider sense in this movie because they lean so heavily into Toby and Andrew having spider sense.
Right.
But then they give him spider sense in Endgame, obviously. Like, we build into that. I'm curious if they're going to have anything about, like, those people were safe. That's why he wasn't alerted to them in the room. Because both, like, Genki, I mean, it's Genki basically, but Ned Leeds and Marissa Tomei being like, your Spider-Man is an absent spider sense.
Right.
But
maybe
he's
only been developing his powers for a year. So maybe maybe it kicked in.
Yeah, I hope so.
But I think the other thing too, that just thinking about in that regard, I mean, remember the spider sense can be overloaded, it can be tricked. Like it's not an end all be all.
Is like Aunt May's not going to hurt him, so it didn't go off.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? Like
it's just there's a little bit of line of like my brain has to go like
no. I totally get that, but like that it may would have had to have made hella like even just would have been enough maybe for it to go off.
Sure.
But like you know what I'm saying?
But
like
both Ned and her.
I have more of an issue with the Ned one than I do because he's in such a like gleeful state that he's not even paying attention to it when at the end he's got the suit on when May sees him, he's not even thinking, and he calls for her. He's like May, and she's not there.
Right.
And then he's like, all right, he's not, and he's just kind of he's not locked in. So that one I give a pass. The other one where he's actually actively crawling in to make sure that no one sees
looking
him,
around suspicious,
not sensing that, because what if it wasn't Ned? What if it was a criminal in he doesn't sense that. Maybe that's what maybe it usually senses. I mean, you guys know better than I do, but I thought that the spider sense really kicks in when he's in danger.
That's what I'm saying is maybe he would sense that there was danger.
But that's the whole thing with the spider sense. It's not like precognition per se. It's literally his senses are his senses are just so attuned. Literally, Ned doesn't move.
That's a good point.
He's just.
I like that writing better in my head canon. I like the idea that it's more of a sensory, like as a spider web. Like you reach out and you feel the tension in the air.
Which they
like Andrew Garfield. They
even mentioned it in Civil War. Once again, to be important that we watched that scene before. When he was there, he's like, "How can you see out of these?" He's like, "I have to. My sensors are dialed up to 11. If I don't turn it down, I'm overloaded."
And then in the bus scene with his hair standing up in Infinity War, that's when we first see it in the MCU.
Right. Forgot about that. So I'm looking forward to that. So we have to, because we still have a little bit more to talk about in this movie, but we'll watch his Infinity War scenes and his Endgame scenes first.
Those all happened before Far From Home.
Before Far From Home, and then so we'll cover those first in the beginning of next week's episode.
Are we gonna do next week's Thanksgiving? Are we gonna do?
No. Thanksgiving's the week after that.
Oh, okay.
No,
so
we got one more week before Thanksgiving, and then the following week.
So are we going to do Spider-Verse? We take a break.
No, we're going to do Spider-Verse. We'll release it on that day. We'll probably just have to shoot it beforehand.
Okay.
We'll release it so that way people have
for
an
that weekend.
Episode.
Okay, gotcha.
Have an episode for it for the weekend.
So I'm going to Comic-Con that weekend. So I'll be at a.
Are you really going?
I'm actually. I've got 3 panels.
You're like the first person. You're probably going to be hosting yourself.
Just me.
Who's going?
No studios.
Comic-Con and studios.
Dude, San Diego. Like the Comic-Con is Thanksgiving
weekend.
And
why?
Literally the weekend in a Navy town are doing a Comic-Con.
I don't know if I've ever heard of a stupider decision.
I thought it was for the purposes of like we'll figure it out as a placeholder, and then now it's happening. I'm booked on 3
Thanksgiving
panels.
weekend.
That's what I mean. I thought they were like
everyone travels the most on Thanksgiving to their homes to see their family. They're not coming to San Diego,
especially or like a Navy town where you're visiting your sailor family.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
And I got 3 panels like they're happening, so I'll be down there.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah,
but are the studios presenting anything?
Not the studios. I'm doing 3 comic panels, which feels like the 90s.
You know what it is? I think that it's because, if I was to guess, it's very similar like with Sony when they have the property, right? And I think that after a certain amount, you have to hold it.
Because it'd be 2 years of nothing.
Of nothing.
So maybe
they're
they
trying
had
to do anything. Maybe they're just grasping at straws, but man, that weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to be down in San Diego.
You got a better shot. Why not do it I'm glad they're not doing it the first weekend of December because that's spectacular. But
but I'm also confused why they wouldn't just do what everyone else did and we'll be fine by next year. It feels
Virtual, you mean?
like so. Just do one virtual, so
One
you're
more virtual.
good.
Well, because I think that
And they might have to have one.
It's the space because
you
there's
have to do it for the space. That's
I don't
also
know how
wild.
much.
They know
Well, they have a
how
lease.
much money. I get that, but they know how much money.
Doesn't matter. There's leases involved, dude. Like it means there's some like the
You're
city.
thinking that they would raise it. They would let them come back, but then raise the.
Well, no, but
raise
They
the
were
price.
talking about leaving San Diego for
Yeah,
years.
they have a
They've
certain-
been talking about going to other
Yeah.
studios. I mean,
Right.
other con locations. So maybe
Right.
this was something. Either way, yeah, that's why I was worried. 'Cause I'm like, I don't want to miss our Spider-Verse one, but
We'll record it.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, because I've already watched the movie, so we'll just figure out when we need to do it. You guys watch the movie, and then we'll check as well. There's only 2 more movies left.
That's what I was saying.
to
Yeah,
go.
we got the mega chunk, and
Yeah.
then Far From Home, and then Spider-Verse itself.
And so for people asking, basically what we're going to do is the way we will do this is we will do a review of. I'll do a single review of No Way Home after I see it, and then we'll do a non-spoiler review for sure, and then we're going to do. Whether or not we do a it depends on when we see it, right? If we see it, like Coy and I had seen Eternals earlier, so we did a non-spoiler kind of longer review.
So bummed I couldn't do that with y'all because I saw it like.
Did you like
the
it?
day it came. I loved it.
I loved it. It's
Yeah.
that's a
Good to
whole,
hear.
whole
Yeah.
other conversation. But so which I loved. I loved it too.
Yeah.
But so either way, if we see it early enough and we want to talk about it and not get spoiled, then we'll do a non-spoiler. However, if we see it just around the same time as everyone else, we'll do Winston, myself, and Coy will do a full spoiler. I'm trying to get a +1 that way I'll be able to. I know Coy's probably got a Sony thing.
I think so. Yeah,
he's going to go. So I'll take Winston, and that way we can continue it off and end our Spider-Man rewatch or watch rather with that movie, and then we're going to move into the Matrix. Winston's going to return for the rewatch series with Coy and myself again because we're going to do the Batman one for sure as we lead into March. But we have more stuff and we have more ideas for what we're going to do with rewatch. But continuing this on, let's see, we got a little bit. Well, you know what? Before we do, I do want to tell you one more thing before we leave, ladies and gentlemen. Where is it? Nope. Oh. I have all these great sponsors, but this is the one that I wanted to talk to you about because, Coy, we've talked about fitness many times on this show, and you've heard about it, and you was even asking me questions about it after the last one.
Lots of confusion's important to
me. Fitbot. You guys know that if you repeat the same exercises over and over again, you lose sight of your progression, and it just kills your motivation. Do not get stuck doing the same workouts. Make progress towards the future, and do it. Because make progress towards the future you. It means, how do you do that? You got to overcome new challenges. And what Fitbod does is they create a fitness program that continually adapts with new exercises and dynamic intensity that adjust to how you are progressing. So you'll be challenged to meet your goals at your own pace. Perfection is an illusion, ladies and gentlemen, but there's always a higher level to strive for that looks different for everyone, especially when it comes to fitness. There is no perfect body that everyone can achieve, but what you can do is continually become a better version of ourselves. You can't get bit by a radioactive spider and get ripped, but you can use Fitbot. It's got a lot of great features. One of the great things you can love that I love is that you can pick workouts that are tailored to any equipment that you have and the goals that you have. It's got very clear and easy to use instructions. It balances muscle groups, and I'm recovered real quick for the next workout. It's very smart the way they put this thing together. So many benefits also. For me, I feel like I'm getting stronger. I feel like I'm getting faster, and it's all to the personal training. I love it. Fitbot, it creates a program based on your unique body, experience, and environment. Whether you're exercising 3 days a week or twice a day, every workout is scientifically proven to be better than the last one. Sign up now, and you're going to get 25% off your membership. It's great. Pick up the pace on your fitness journey with Fitbot today, and your future self is going to thank you. Get 25% off your membership right now at fitbot.me/SENLive. All right, before we get the hell out of here, the other thing that I wanted to mention was these post-credit scenes, right? There's 2 of them. Mm-hmm. The Captain America bit it's funny.
Yeah,
and
I
remember sitting in the theater and everybody waiting to see what the next one is, and he basically
Let's
tells
talk about
you,
patience.
Yeah,
and it trolls you in the same exact tone the movie has.
Yeah.
It's so clever.
It's great. It's
yeah,
great. But that's not the main one. The main one is the Vulture and Scorpion.
Yeah.
Right? So when that all happens, and he's like, this to me goes back to the character of who he is. Mm-hmm. He wasn't lying when he's saying he was doing this for his family, right? He was doing this because his whole thing was, it was the little guy that was getting screwed, and he's like, "Come on, Pete. You know, Stark doesn't care about us.
Yeah.
People don't care about us, right?" And he protects him, and he goes, and he even says to him, "He's like, I'm going to let you out of here. I'm going to let you walk through those doors because you saved my daughter's life, and I'm not going to forget that. But if you don't, I'll kill everybody you know."
Yeah.
Right? But then he saves him, so it's like another one. He's like, "I'm not going to rat you out now."
That was the one thing I forgot to mention, that he reminds me so much of
Thanos,
no, not Thanos, of oh my god,
Ralph Biscuits.
Juan Carlos Esposito
Yeah.
in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Why
Gus?
did I not,
Gus.
Gus, thank you. The idea that he did not innately start off on this murderous
Yeah.
path.
Right.
It's that as things unfolded. So
Gotta
like
do what you
even
gotta
with that shocker was running his mouth. I'm like, I'm out of here. And he's like, dude. What? And he's like,
And
and,
he
I'm
threw
gonna
the
take this with me,
gravity
and I'll tell people. And he goes, oh, cool. And he thinks it's a gravity gun and incinerates him. And he goes, oh. Well, that's not my problem. And like he starts to go to that place where he's
Yeah.
getting darker and darker, and he's willing to kill.
And he understands
so-
that he's just protecting his family at
That's
the end of the day.
and he's-
that's
he's
the
got a
Volk.
code
And
of
he's still,
honor.
but he does still pop back into like that code of honor, like as he says, he's like, if I knew who he was,
And
he'd be
that
dead.
to me is a way more interesting Vulture than the one we even get in the comics. I think this is one of those movies where the character improves with more screen
Yeah.
time, and I
It's
like
not
this
black
Vulture.
and white, man.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he's not just a thief.
villain.
Yeah, and this is way more interesting. And that last credit scene is why I thought for years he was going to recruit the Sinister Six, because it felt like to me Scorpion would be one. You know, he's recruiting
Right.
Morbius in the trailer.
Well,
I don't know if that's going to come to pass,
right.
but
so we know Keaton's in Morbius. Obviously, they showed him in that. How that all ties into this, we don't know, because I the more and more we get closer to this, though, I think that Coy might be right, where they're just going to figure out a way to get Tom Holland into the Sonyverse, keep him in the Sonyverse, and he can't get back to the MCU.
But see, that's the thing. What is to stop him from being in both? Because again, since we've opened up the multiverse at this point, what is to stop people from just freely flowing through dimensions and all that kind of
I
stuff?
guess
Lawyers.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Well, you say that, but again, I think Sony sees the writing on the wall.
I see the benefit for Sony and Marvel, but it's bigger on one side.
Yeah. Well, I think
I think that's going to be temporary because of that.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how the deals. You're right. I mean, they could put together deals that, because they've opened this possibility up, they could put it together. I just think for the time being,
Sure.
I
they're
think it
gonna
also
focus
might
on this other
benefit Spider-Man. I could use some friendly neighborhood hijinks. I really could use a
And then he
Spider-Man
just
that
does
feels
the
like
other
this
stuff.
first movie.
Right.
Like I could use some contained, like we're talking about with the shows versus the movies. I'd love a Spider-Man show, but that'll never happen. But I could use some of that scale Spider-Man adventures.
Yeah.
That way, when this gets big again, it feels like something.
Right.
After Far From Home, going to space and all this stuff, I'm like, yo, go back to the bodega. Like I'd
That's
like
it.
that character
Yeah.
again, and that's what Sony could give us.
So overall, this movie, I think, was,
Or through Miles, or Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, this movie, Tom Holland really sets it up. I think it was a hard thing to do, because the same thing with Andrew. I think he had more of a cushion than Garfield did. I still think Garfield had the hardest road, because it was
So
2 years removed from a very beloved franchise, minus Coy, but it was just a couple of years removed.
At the end of the
from
day,
that.
we now know who's the weakest Spider-Man, and they only get better.
But it was that far removed, so he had a lot to go against, right? And then the second movie doesn't hit. He doesn't have this Marvel cushion, because Holland had a Marvel cushion. He was introduced through Marvel, which was already had a crap load of successful Marvel films already.
Yeah.
And then he debuts in one of the most, that was essentially an Avengers film.
Yeah.
With them all fighting. Everybody, remember how hyped up everyone was for Civil War? It was like a wrestler's debut at the Royal Rumble when they show him. I mean, it's like, oh, there he is, and it's like, and so he had that going for him, but he capitalized on it, and
Yeah.
they capitalized on it by doing a really good movie.
I was working at a movie theater at the time when Civil War came out. I don't remember when it's 47 minutes or 52. There was a minute mark that his entrance is, and I would go in every single show, and I would just hear the audience lose their mind at the Spider-Man entrance and leave. Like I would
Yeah.
just experience that every single day.
You were not in the space yet at that point?
I was. I made so little money. I was doing both. I worked the Infinity War red carpet, and then I worked at a movie theater serving food at the Infinity War.
Oh,
movie.
here in
Which
LA.
theater?
I was in LA.
Oh, okay.
IPIC, Pasadena. I was serving food. I was slinging.
I thought I knew you.
Did you go to
that true?
IPIC?
I worked at IPIC, bro. I was a bartender for
What?
years.
What?
This is
How do you-
hilarious.
that's
Is this-
ridiculous.
Yeah, dude, I
you
was a
guys-
server.
You guys work together?
Do you know? You remember? Yeah, apparently. Do you
best
remember? Do you
ever.
remember? Do you remember Chris and Dan
Just do
Taylor?
it. Point at each other.
Yeah.
Point at each other.
IPIC?
Pasadena? Servers? Marvel films?
Is that how you guys-
Terry, the drunk
Yeah.
manager, and
It's
yeah.
hilarious.
Dude, we worked together before we worked together.
Dude, I literally kept looking at you every time I saw you at Collider. And I was like, I swear I know this guy, but I don't.
We worked
know.
together
Somebody-
in the civilian.
And if you're an audience member, please piece this out. I will retweet it. I will
I
retweet
cannot
it.
believe.
say.
Yeah, so we like literally served.
Pilar.
Yeah.
And, yeah. No, dude, I
amazing.
definitely worked with you for.
That's
a while.
incredible.
I just.
hilarious.
It was the minute
Lisa
you
was
said
Lisa
it.
the GM when you were
Yes,
there?
she was.
You never
Lisa Lisa's incredible. I love Lisa. To this day, she's
You
the
never
coolest.
figured this out until now?
In this moment.
Until this
best.
exact
Because
moment.
we didn't really start talking until the Schmodown when I was managing you.
And you
I
guys
was
never had a geeky conversation once when you were there?
because you were bartending. I was just grabbing drinks, running into the theaters. So I was still working there through Infinity War, and I was working Infinity War.
Wow.
When did you start there?
All right, this is for another
We can do this
conversation.
later. That's
Dude, that's
hilarious.
insane, man.
Hilarious. Anyway,
and there's
Shout
the
out to I Pick Pasadena.
And there's the Spider-Verse.
There's the multiverse.
That's the
right now,
multiverse.
there's a
You can
multiverse
just-
where me and him are still working at iPick.
and actually talk to each other.
We're just standing there geeking out over Avengers 18.
You guys actually talked to. You started a podcast and you have 300,000 subscribers within 2 weeks.
Good work, us. I'm proud of us over there. Look at us, Spider-Gwen over there in that
Look at
universe.
us.
Look
Look at us. Who
Who'da
would've thought?
Who'd have thought?
All right, listen.
Dude, we knew each other before we knew each other. That's crazy.
This was a lot of fun. Watching this movie was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. It was just the first one. This was Homecoming. And this was the first Tom Holland movie inside the MCU. Of course, we covered the Civil War stuff in the beginning. Once again, guys, if you didn't already, please, please, please do. Please go and head on over to the Big Thing podcast feed. See an audio. It is very important. It helps us. Even if you've listened to this show, if you're one of the subscribers, I get it. But please, we don't, for the longest time, get rid of the Schmobot. Don't do super chats. Don't interrupt the show. Don't ask people for money. All we're asking you to do is go and subscribe to this podcast feed. That's it. And it doesn't cost you a damn thing. So go and do that. It's the podcast. It's in the link in the description.
Don't make me and Winston go back to the restaurant game.
That's right.
Please just subscribe. Please.
Thank you guys
please.
so very much for joining us here. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for next
back?
week. Next week we're going to do Far From Home.
Jakey Jakes.
Yep, and then we're gonna close it out. We're only 2 away, guy. This is what a adventure.
whirlwind.
What an adventure it's
been a ride, man.
It has. All right, we got a couple left. Thank you guys so very much. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.
Dude.